I thought it might be good to give you a little bit of my background so you know where I'm coming from, where I've been, and because I'm also going to tell you some of my failures, I thought it might be good to tell you some of my successes. So you don't leave here and say, boy, Pastor Dan, he messed up a lot of businesses. He's running our finances at the church. Okay, so I want to make sure you know that, as I go through the failures, that there were some victories along the way too. Before I came back to Point Harbor, I was teaching at a college that was at one time the largest Bible college in the country. And I was the Dean of Online Education and the professor, the chair of the theology department. So that means whenever Pastor John makes fun of theologians, he's talking about me, okay? So just to make that clear, I'm the one that he's making fun of. So I was there. I also was the director of operations for the second largest Baptist mission organization in the world. We had a $40 million budget. So I did that for a while, and I pastored a couple of churches. I was the lead pastor at a couple of churches, and the executive pastor at a mega church in the Midwest. And so I have a little bit of experience in ministry, and this is my wife, Michelle. I meant to introduce her. She works over in children's ministry, so she's probably running around this morning taking care of your kiddos. And we've been back here since last March, not last March, March before last, so almost going on 2 years. So we've been back here at Point Harbor, and it's been great. We've enjoyed our time back here. But I am a little peculiar in that we're going to talk about numbers today. I'm a nerd, and numbers excite me. I get excited about looking at budgets and numbers and things like that. And my wife thinks it's odd because I cannot have a hobby or a pastime that doesn't make money. Okay? I mean, why would you have a hobby that didn't make money? I don't understand that. So I've had several hobbies and started some online businesses along the way, and I've talked about a few of those. I mentioned to you about deadroses.com, I think, in the past, and my youngest daughter's business that she ran in high school, selling dead roses to people, and she made good money at that. And then, we have wildsnacks.com, and we have several other online businesses that have done okay, have made us a little bit of money along the way, but we've also had some businesses that didn't do so good. And I'm going to tell you about some of those. I also like to escape from straitjackets for fun. And some of you have seen that, and I'm not quite up to that yet, but I'm going to do it again for you sometime. I'll bring my straitjacket in, and or if you have one at home, if you want to bring one up, that'd be fine. But along the way, we've started lots of businesses, and the businesses we've done some of them have done okay, and some of them have failed. I started this one. I want to tell you about it. It was 417today.com. Now, 417 is the area code where we used to live in the Midwest, in Missouri, okay? And so 417today.com was a site that I built to be a classified ad site. Now, here's my business plan, okay? I'm going to have a classified ad site, and I'm going to only charge you when you list to sell a car. Okay, and I started this in 2003, and I thought, well, there's only this little other site that is starting up that does classified ads. It's called Craigslist. Yeah, that's it. And in 2003, it was a site out in California, and it wasn't that big a deal. And then in 2004, this other company called eBay bought 25% of it, and it went worldwide. And my little 417 Today kind of didn't do so great. But it wasn't so bad because I didn't just have 417 Today. I had lots of area codes. I even had 757today.com, and it didn't do well either. And I've had several along the way. I've had one. I tried to do this. It was called Weebay. And it was a store where you could bring your goods, and we'd list them and sell them on eBay. And I had the idea for it. I never quite put it together, didn't have time, didn't have money, and kind of didn't do it. And now you can see those in shopping centers all over the country. They have these little stores. And there's several others that I've tried along the way that haven't made a dime. In fact, they've lost money along the way. But, I'm not alone in this. Whenever you have a vision, it takes a couple of things. It takes time, as I mentioned, but it also takes money. But I'm not alone in that running out of money part of a vision, because there are, municipalities that run out of money. You've probably heard in the news lately, there are municipalities that have run out of money. There are people that start roads and they don't finish the roads. People that start bridges and they don't finish the bridge. And, there's a shopping mall that ran out of funding, so they're dismantling the shopping mall. So people do things, they have a vision, they don't have money for it, and then they go forward with it anyway, and it doesn't have funding. Well, that happens in life. Have you ever had a great idea? Y'all ever had a great idea? Y'all ever had the idea? The $1 million idea? By the way, that's what my wife calls my ideas. Oh, another $1 million idea. She says it as she rolls her eyes. Am I supposed to read something into that? I'm not really sure. But, part of my problem is I don't sleep very well. So I get up at night and I write down ideas and I think of all these ideas, but there's something missing, and it's money. It takes money to have vision. And that's what we're going to focus on this morning. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 gives us some instruction here too. It kind of gives us an idea of God's plan. This is God's plan of how He's going to fund the vision that He gives to the church. And He says in 1 Corinthians, I think I said chapter 6, it's 16, chapter 1. He says, "Now concerning the collection for the saints, as I directed the churches of Galatia, so you also are to do this." He's saying you're to do this too, just like I told the churches in Galatia. He says in verse 2, "On the first day of every week," wow, that's today, right? First day of every week, each of you is to put something aside and store it up, as he may prosper. Now, we could breeze right past that phrase, but I think that phrase is important because I think it teaches proportional giving. It says, as he may prosper. So, as you've prospered, you give proportionally as you've prospered. If you get a pay raise, then you give a giving raise. If you get a pay cut, then some of you have experienced this. You give a giving cut, and so it's as the Lord prospers you. It's proportional to how much money you've made that week. On the first day of the week, each of you is to put aside and store it up as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come. Now, Paul writes this and he says, look, I don't want to take the offering when I'm there, because people were giving him a hard time. They were saying, hey, Paul's just in it for the money. He's just here for the money. So he said, I don't want you to take up a collection when I'm there. Take it up beforehand. But that's beyond the scope of this discussion. But I know that, probably you've been in churches that raised money in different ways. God's plan is through the tithes and the offerings of his people, but there are churches that try other things. There are other methods. Maybe there's a bingo method for funding the vision. Maybe you went to a church and they had bingo and that funded their vision. And maybe you're at a church that had a lot of spaghetti dinners. I'm all in favor of spaghetti dinners, by the way. And I think spaghetti dinners are great, when you raise money for camp or for activities and stuff. Those kind of things are great because they raise extra money outside of the vision money. It's a great idea. But to fund the vision of the church, God didn't say in Malachi 3:10, he did not say, bring the old clothes and knickknacks into the storehouse so that we might have the largest rummage sale in history. The rummage sale is not God's plan for raising money for the vision. He didn't say bring all your old clothes and dump them in the foyer or foyer. He didn't say bring your knickknacks and put tags on them so you could have a rummage sale. He said bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse so that there may be food in my house. So God has a plan to fund the vision. He has a plan to fund the vision, and it involves us. It's ironic. all of God's plans seem to involve us. Why does he do that? Wouldn't it be easier if he didn't use us? Okay, let me just say this. It'd be a lot easier if he didn't use me. But that's not God's plan. He finishes Malachi 3:10 and he says, "Put me to the test." You know, that's the only place in Scripture that I've found so far that God says to test him. He only says to test him in your area of finances. He says, "Put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need." Or it says in other translations, until you can't contain it all. That's the kind of blessing I want. Where there is no giving, the vision perishes. If there's no funding for the vision doesn't work and it doesn't go forward. God's plan to fund his vision is through the tithes and offerings of his people. Wise men bring gifts. He plans to do it through the local church. God has a plan to use the local church to carry out his vision. Now, we can stop there because that's a great plan. I think we'd all agree with it, right? Can you say amen if you agree with that? Okay, that was pretty half-hearted. So God has a great plan. He's going to carry it out. He's got vision for us, and he's going to carry it out through Point Harbor. He's going to fund it through us, through our giving, and he's got a plan. But there's a problem. There's a problem with the plan. Not with God's part of it, but with our part of it. And I think one of the problems is we've forgotten the idea of first fruits. You know, we forgot this idea of first fruits. It used to be that people would give out of their first fruits. You know, the first money they got, they would take out their tithes and offerings and give out of the first fruits. When they went and they harvested in the field, they took the first fruits, the best part, the first part, and gave it to God. And then they kept the rest of it for themselves or sold or whatever and did commerce. I mean, even Nehemiah talks about this if we get a little farther ahead in chapter 10. In chapter 10, Nehemiah says in verse 35, "We obligate ourselves to bring the first fruits of our ground and the first fruits of all fruit in every tree year by year." And it doesn't say to Visa and MasterCard. It says to Discover. And no, it says to the house of the Lord. So I think we've forgotten the idea of first fruits because we're pretty much our first fruits go to Visa and MasterCard and the car payment, right? I mean, that's the way Americans live. I mean, we live that way. What's wrong with our culture that's different than Nehemiah's culture? There's not a whole lot different. In fact, Pastor John touched on the problems in Nehemiah's culture back when he preached in chapter 5 of Nehemiah. Do y'all remember chapter 5 a few weeks ago? He didn't go into a lot of detail on it. I just want to touch on it again. Back in Nehemiah chapter 5, verse 3, I think this is the problem. They had the same problem we do. Verse 3 says, "There were also those who said, 'We are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our houses to get grain because of the famine.'" We're borrowing money because of the famine. We're having to leverage our houses and our fields to get money. Verse 4 says, "And there were those who said, 'We have borrowed money for the king's taxes on our fields and our vineyards.'" We don't even have the money to pay our taxes, so we had to borrow. We had to charge up the MasterCard all the way. We had to max out the Visa just so we could pay the taxes. And then Nehemiah says in verse 10 of chapter 5, he says this, "Moreover," and when he says moreover, that means, hey, pay attention. He says, "I and my brothers and my servants are lending them money and grain. Let us," pay attention to this, "let us abandon this exacting of interest." You see, folks, I think they had the same problem we do. We can't afford to fund the vision that God has for Point Harbor because we're paying so much in interest. Isn't that right? Say, "Oh me." Oh me. Because where there is no giving, the vision perishes. It's become tough for us in this day and age to fund the church's vision, God's vision through the church, because of stinking compound interest. Because of 18% on Visa and 21.2% on Discover Card And let's not talk about payday loans. Because of compounding interest, it's become hard for Americans, at least, to pay, to give those gifts to God, to bring the gold, the silver, the gifts to the Lord. We have the same problem that people in Nehemiah's day had, and that is we're paying so much money to our creditors, we're in bondage. We're in bondage. Albert Einstein and several others have been credited with this quote. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Those that understand it earn it. Those that don't pay it. And folks, that's the problem, I think, for us. I'm going to give you a quick example, if I can. I need somebody that will agree to pray for me from now until New Year's Day, and I'm going to pay you. I'm going to pay either a penny or $5. Okay, any volunteers? I'm going to let you choose a penny. I got real money here, folks. This is real money. You guys thought I was going to pull out some play money. This is real thing here. Maybe you don't pray normally, but you'd pray for me if I paid you. I got a volunteer? Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm either going to give you $5. Now, I don't want those, please bless everybody. I want you to pray specifically for Dan Blakesley. Yes, sir. From now till New Year's Day. Yes, sir. Now, I'll either give you a $5 bill now, or I'll give you a penny, and I'll double the money every day till New Year's Day. All right? Let's show everybody why you took that. Here, let me pay you in advance, because I won't be around. Oh, here's a quarter, because that's $10.24. So, because I'm doubling your money now. Every day between now and New Year's Day. Sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Let me show you why that makes a difference. If you double a penny every day for 10 days, you get $5.12. Double it on that 11th day, which is New Year's Day, you'll get $10.24. Now, I wanted him to pray for me for 30 days, but I couldn't afford that. Because after 30 days of doubling your money, it's $5.5 million. That's the power of compound interest. Those that understand it earn it. Those that don't pay it. That's the power of compound interest. If I had $5.5 million, I'd be praying for myself. So, $5.5 million. Now I lost my train of thought. That just shot right through there. Think of how much gold, frankincense, and myrrh you could buy for $5.5 million. Now, let me tell you all this. I don't want you to feel bad, because there is no sin in the Bible called debt. Okay? Now, sin is a debt that needs to be paid, but that's not what I'm talking about. It is not a sin to be in debt. Most of us are in debt. You know, most of us are in debt. Most of us spend more than we make. You know, I went to a doctor one time and I said, Doc, I need to lose weight. And he said, there's only two things that will help you. More of one and less of another. Now, I think I got them backwards. But when people come to me for financial counseling, it's the same thing. There's only two sides of the equation. You have to bring more money in or send less money out. That's what it is. And the problem is we're bombarded with advertising this time of year. And we tend to go in debt because we want to show our family how much we love them. Because, you know, we see all the commercials, and we all know that every kiss begins with... Say it with me now. Every kiss begins with... So you have to have the box, right, on Christmas. Really? Do you really, ladies, do you really need that? Okay. Well, how about this? He went to... I hate Jared. Not that one. Not that one in volume. He's a great Jared. You know, my wife and I were in New York City last weekend. That was her Christmas present. I didn't have to buy her anything. I just took her to New York City. And she wanted to see the big tree at Rockefeller Center. We were on the Today Show. It was wonderful. We went to the ice skating rink there at Rockefeller Center, and I think it's the 5th time we went to see the tree. And there was a skating rink, and it was empty. People gathered all around, and I was like, why is nobody skating? And there was a couple out on the skating rink out there on the ice, and he knelt on one knee, and she said yes. And I couldn't help myself. I said, he went to Jared. You know, you get bombarded with the ads. You can't help it. And, you know, let me tell you about a December to remember. How many of you do this? Huh? Really? I mean, do you really go buy a $40,000 car without talking to your spouse? You know, I can't see that happening. Now, I tell you what, if I pulled up with a car with a bow on it, my wife would be happy. I'm not saying she wouldn't be. But would you really do that? But we're bombarded with these commercials. You know, and the ones that really get me are these really high-priced, high-ticket items at Christmas time. It's like Christmas is about giving the biggest, most expensive gift you can give. There was a time in our life when we really couldn't afford Christmas presents. And so what we told our kids, that we had this tradition. And our tradition is you could only give a gift that was either handmade or used. And we did that for years. I mean, we lived on, and it makes it tough because you have to put thought into a gift. You know, it's not like going out and getting a gift card or something at Kay's or Jared's, junk like that. You had to put thought into it. You had to think, or you had to make something with your own hands. And it was great giving gifts like that, and it was a lot cheaper. Now, folks, if you've missed everything I've said up to this point, I want you to catch this, because right now, in the next few minutes, I'm going to try to do it in 10 minutes or less. I'm going to tell you how to drive a free car for the rest of your life and retire a millionaire. Do I have your attention? All right. Now, you know I'm the numbers guy, okay? So there's going to be some numbers involved. But this is critical. If you get this, if you change one thing in your life and you could change this, you could retire a millionaire, drive free cars, and fund the vision that God gives to the church with this one change in your life. You see, in America, we are in love with our cars. Now, I have to say, I'm a car guy. I love my car. It's 13 years old, and I had to put $500 into it last month, but I haven't had a car payment since 1992. Okay, I haven't had a car payment since 1992, and I'm proud of that. But I drive a car that sometimes breaks down, and I have to put money into it. In the last 18 months, I've spent $500. How much did you spend in your car last month? Don't answer that. The average car in America sells for $26,000. The average new car sells for $26,000 at an interest rate of 9.6% and a car payment of $475 a month. Now, let me tell you this. This is what I tell people when they come to me for counsel, and they talk about, well, I got to get a new car because my junker is breaking down. I got to get a new car. And I always say this: pay yourself that car payment for 10 months. You're saying you can afford the car payment, right? You're saying, I can afford $475 a month. So if you can afford the $475 a month, then pay it to yourself for 10 months. If you take $475 a month times 10 months, you'll have $4,750. Thank you. You'll have $4,750 in the bank in 10 months. Now, if you're driving a beater that's worth about $1,500, because I think any car that runs and has wheels is probably worth $1,500 in this area. Now, you may prove me wrong, but I'm going to say, for sake of example, let's say it's worth $1,500, and you take your $4,750 that you just saved up in just 10 months. 10 months is not a lifetime, folks. It's pretty short. And you save that up, and you take your $1,500 that you could get for your current car, you could go buy for cash a $6,000 used car. How about that? You got a car. That's a pretty major upgrade. Okay, if you're driving a beater, $1,500 beater, and you saved for 10 months and you bought a $6,000 car, that's a major upgrade. Now let's try this again. Let me make sure you got it. You got a $6,000 car, and for the next 10 months, you do the exact same thing. You save $475 a month because, after all, you said that you could afford the car payment, right? Okay, so if you could afford the car payment, then you could afford to save that for 10 months and have another $4,750 plus the $6,200 because your car is only 10 months old. Don't you think you could probably sell it for about what you paid for it? You might lose a few hundred. You might gain some money. It depends how well you bought it. But you're going to get about what you paid for your car, and that means 20 months from now, you could be driving an $11,000 car in 20 months. Let me let you in on a secret. That $26,000 car that you wanted to buy brand new for $475 a month 20 months ago is now worth $11,000. And you don't have a car payment. Now, folks, you got to get this. Because if you keep doing this, let's say you take that $475 a month. Now, the average car payment in America today lasts about 72 months. 72 months, that's 6 years. But let's say you do for 60 months. The next 60 months, you put $475. Remember, that's that car payment you said you could afford in the first place. And you put that in a decent mutual fund, and I'm going to say it makes 10%. Now, we could argue all day long that it's hard to find a mutual fund today paying 10%. That may be true. But over the life of the stock market makes 12%, 11.6%. Okay, so you can't go by short term, you have to go long term. We're talking 5 years. So we're going to use 10% because that was easier to do the math. So if you put $475 a month in your stock mutual fund making about 10%, and that was your car fund, you called that your car fund, and you made that car payment to yourself for 60 months, at the end of that 60 months, you now have a whopping $37,000 in your car fund. Now, if you were making the car payment that you were making, you would have paid $33,000 for that $26,000 car that is now worth $6,000. But instead, your $11,000 car is 5 years older, and it's probably ready to be replaced, right? It's been 5 years, you have bought a car, and you probably have that, you've got that $37,000. Let's say you took $12,000 out of that mutual fund and you bought a car. That leaves you with how much money? $25,000 in change. If you leave that money alone, you don't add any more money to it, and you just left that $25,000 in your car fund and just lived off the interest every 60 months, you could buy a $16,000 car. I just showed you how to have a free car the rest of your life by just paying yourself the car payment, because you don't have to add any more money to your car fund. This is 20 months later, 20 months, and then 60 months later, and now every 60 days, wouldn't that be great? Every 60 months, which is the average, actually it's less than the average car length of a car payment, you can buy yourself a car. You can go car shopping with cash. You know what happens when you go car shopping with cash? You can pretty much buy whatever car you want because you've got $160, $100 bills. Cash talks. Cash talks. Now, if you're a car salesman, it's okay to buy with cash, right? Okay, I don't want to make anybody mad. All right, now let's say this. Let's say you're at this point and you're like, okay, great. Every 60 months, I get a new car. I take my money out of my mutual fund. You know, it's not going to get 10% all the time. It's going to get 3%. It's going to get 18%. But you know, if you have 6% one year and 18% the other year, then you're averaging 12. This is based on 10%. So what if I'm half wrong? You're still doing okay, right? Okay, now let's say you take that $475 you've been putting into your car fund and you decide, you know, one day I want to retire. How many of y'all want to retire one day? Okay, I'm tired now, and I was retired yesterday. I'm going to be tireder more later on. But anyway, I'm going to retire someday. And let's say you take that $475 and you put it in a different mutual fund account, and you designate that retirement fund. Now, this isn't your IRA. This isn't your 401k. This is just separate money. And you're going to put this money away, and you're going to do that for 10 years. In 10 years, you're going to have $100,000. But let's just say in 10 years, you got $100,000. In 20 years, you have $363,000. So in 20 years, say if you're 45 now, in 20 years, you're going to have a little bit of money extra in your retirement. Now, let's say you're a little younger, or you retire later, like if you're a pastor and you retire at age 80 and you're 50 now, and you go for 30 years, you're going to have $1 million. Okay, so if you've got 30 years to do this, you've got $1 million extra saved up. Now, I just told you how to have a free car the rest of your life and how to have $1 million when you retire. You ought to thank me. But what if we decided we're going to change our family tree? What if we took Proverbs 22:6 and we took it the way it was intended? And we read Proverbs 22:6, and it says, train up a child in the way he should go. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. And we took that as a proverb, not a promise, but a proverb. And we actually took it in context, and we read the next verse too. And it says in verse 7, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. Did y'all know that was in that context? We're supposed to teach our children this information. When was the last time you had that conversation with your kids? How about after Christmas? You don't have to do it before Christmas. But how about for New Year's? Sit down and say, kids, let me tell you something. Don't borrow money on a depreciating asset. Don't borrow money to buy a depreciating asset. Do this instead, and go through these numbers with them and show them that if they start right after college, now think about this. If you taught them this principle, they have a lot longer, right, to do it. And if you taught them this right after college, and they could save $475 a month, which is a car payment, get their car fund funded, and then for 40 years, they would retire a multi-millionaire and choose your retirement home. I'm all in favor of that. I'm all in favor of that. Folks, just one choice, life choice, could change your family tree. Just one lesson to your children, if they caught this, they could change the way they live the rest of their life. They might not have to live in the financial bondage that we've lived in. You could change your family tree.